Hello everyone, welcome to this first video to give you an overview of SALT. In this video, I want to show you how to enter data into SALT and how to use all of the different features that we're going to be using the entire semester. So in each section, you're going to have the ability to go a little depth, have more practice with all of these tools. First thing you want to know is how to get to SALT. When you go to Google, and you can't see this right now. There we go, google.com. You can type in Cengage salt. And then you have the link to our actual salt tool. And the default page that we're on is under the data set, the tool set. And here you have one of two options. You can use a selected data set. That's one that's already in here. You can select one. And Cengage lets us know the type of variables we have, the number of observations, and a description of the data set. They also give us some notes about what can we do with this particular data. So you can definitely use these tools. You can also import your own data set. When you want to import your own data set, it has to be as a .csv file. So let's take a look at section 1.3, lecture notes. And in these lecture notes, sometimes you'll be given your data as a horizontal list. Sometimes you'll be given your data in a frequency distribution. So what we're going to do is to take this data, place it in Microsoft Excel, and then save the file as a .csv file. So we can highlight this data. I can right click and copy, or I can use the shortcut Control and C. I want to name this data, so I'm going to name it example. And then I want to paste the data. Now we have an issue. So our issue is it pastes it with your semicolons. And what we need is to put this data in a vertical list so that Microsoft Excel can save it as a .csv file. So I'm going to show you two different functions that we're going to use in order to do this, but you can always just manually type in these values as well. So the first function that we're going to use, we're going to click in the very first box where you have your data entered. I put it in column B for a specific reason, and you'll see in a second. So I'm highlighting B2. I want to go to the Data tab. And then under the Data Tools group, there's a text to column. I want to select a delimited list. And then I can tell it how it's delimited, how is it spaced out. So we're spaced by semicolons. Now what it's going to do, everywhere it finds a semicolon, it's going to separate our data values. Now we have all of our data values here. The problem is that it's in a row, and we need all of our data in a column. So what we're going to do, type the equal sign, and we're going to use transpose. So what transpose does is it changes your data if it's horizontal into vertical, and if it's vertical into horizontal. And I want to highlight my data set. So now what it's done is it's taken that horizontal data set and has now made it vertical. The challenge is it doesn't have the specific value. It doesn't have, this is not 5. It's the transpose of that. So what I want to do is highlight this data set, press Control and C to copy, go back over to that column A, and press Control and V to paste. Now you see if I just did Control and V, it's not giving me exactly what I want. Instead, we want to actually right click here and use this second option under paste to paste values. Now we actually have the values in our data set. So I'm going to delete that column, delete the rest of this data. Once again, there are multiple ways that you can enter your data this way. The key is you want to go to File, and once you save as, make sure you're saving this as a .csv file, a comma delimited file. Okay, we can close that out. And now in SALT, when I click on upload.csv, I have raw data. Your frequency table, that's the second option that we saw in the lecture notes. So if you save this particular table, then you would use that second option for frequency table. You can also use it as a two-way contingency table if you have that data saved. Now we're going to upload. I want to select example 2. And then it's going to ask me which variable do I want. I only had one variable called example, and they're selecting that it's numerical. We can change this. Now, our data set is inside of SALT. When we click on descriptive statistics, if the text is too small for you on the screen, you can hold down Control and scroll with your mouse to increase the size of the text. So on this very first page, you have the numerical statistics that will provide for that data set for you. And since your variable is numerical, it automatically generates these values. If we would have said that this variable was categorical, and we can go back to data set, we can click here, maybe not. Under the sprocket, you can change this to categorical. So now if this data is categorical, what it will do is it will count how many times it sees each of these values, and it will create your frequency distribution and your relative frequency distribution. So how many 2s did we have in the original data set? How many 3s did we have? How many 4s did we have? Now, if we want to go under charts and graphs, I'm going to switch my data set back to numerical. Under our charts and graphs, select our variable, example, and now the default is a histogram. You can select your bin width. So if I just wanted to increment by 1s, I can also change my starting point to start at 0 and then recalculate this histogram. It can create a box plot for us. If we had multiple variables, we can also select the group. So we can compare example number 1 to example number 2 and compare their box plots. We can select dot plot, scatter plot. If we had 2 variables, we can come back to that. Bar chart only works if we have qualitative data. Same thing with pie chart. And then we have the probability plot. But what you can see is it does create the summary statistics down at the bottom for us. So that will cover us from chapters 1 to chapter 3, I believe. You have your distribution calculators. So when we get to our normal distribution, you can enter your mean and your standard deviation, and you can enter in your z-score, and it will determine the probability for you. What does this orange region represent in terms of area? We can change it to right tail as well, and then it will change the values. We can separate it by both tails. And this is also the tool that you will use if you teach your hypothesis testing, finding the critical values. You'll use this tool. You can also use between as well. So with this tool, you can enter values here. Let's say if you wanted to know what's the probability of having a z-score below 2.7. You can type that value in and it gives you the probability. You can also do the same thing with percentile. So what z-score represents 85, a percentile of 85%. So you can type in the percentile or the area that you have, the orange region on the left, and then it will calculate the z-score for you. If we had the example where we're talking about IQ scores, having a mean of 100 and standard deviation of 15, we can also ask questions of between what 2 z-scores do you see 65% of your data? And so your z-scores will be 85 to 98, 85.98 and 114.0. You have sampling techniques that we aren't going to use in this particular class, so we typically won't use that tab. For your inferential statistics, oh, sorry, I forgot something. Under your normal distributions, you have your binomial distributions, where you can enter in your number of trials and your probability of success. And once again, you can change whether you're trying to find the area on the left, on the right, and both of the tails between the values, and whether you're equal to a particular number. You have your student's t distribution also. Then under inferential statistics, we can select the test. In this particular class, we are only going to use the one sample t and the one sample proportion. So I can upload the data that we had at the very beginning, and then it will enter in the sample mean, the sample standard deviation, our sample size. I can enter in the hypothesized mean, and then I can determine the type of test that we want to do. Then when we click on generate results, it gives us the null and alternative hypotheses, the standard error, the degrees of freedom, my test statistic, and the p-value here. We can also create the confidence interval, and that gives us that information. And proportion is just as easy. Enter your number of successes, enter your number of trials, and you can create a confidence interval and change your interval as well. And then here it shows up here. Regression, we're going to need two variables. So let's go back and use one of the original data sets that has two numerical values. Boston Marathon. Let's use that. And then I want to select all of the variables that we have here. So once we go to the regression tab, I need to select my x-axis. Let's say women's winning time and then men's winning time. You have your scatter plot. We can select our regression line. We can use confidence bands around that line. You have your least squares regression line, and in this software, they have the dependent variable first and then the intercept second. You have your correlation, your R-squared, your p-value that we don't use, and then below that, you can look specifically at the intercept and the slope. Alrighty, hope this helps. Have a great day.